So, to start our extensive exploration of this material today, I want to paint a picture that I think is going to be intensely familiar to literally anyone listening.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal experience at this point.
Right. So, picture this. It is late at night. The room you're in is completely dark. It's entirely silent.
Just that one light source.
Exactly. The only thing in the room is this cold, sharp kind of blue glow illuminating your face. Your eyelids are incredibly heavy. You are, just completely
Your
exhausted.
body is telling you to sleep.
Yeah, your body is done. The ambient temperature of the room is cool. You're wrapped up in a heavy blanket. You are perfectly safe. And yet your thumb just continues this rhythmic, almost almost hypnotic swipe upward across the glass screen.
It's just muscle memory at that hour.
It really is. The friction of the glass against your skin is literally the only physical interaction you're having. And as you swipe, you pass a video of an intense, screaming argument between two strangers in a parking lot.
A highly charged emotional moment.
Right. And then, a fraction of a heartbeat later, you swipe again. And now you're watching a story of profound, agonizing personal betrayal. Someone is literally weeping into their front-facing camera.
Unfiltered trauma just served up instantly.
And then another swipe, and you are plunged into this beautifully edited, high-definition narrative of utter societal collapse.
Accompanied by that urgent music, usually.
Yes! The panic-inducing music with that heavy synth bass that you can actually feel vibrating slightly in the palm of your hand.
As a sensory overload.
It is. But you are just lying in your bed. You haven't moved. But suddenly, there is a very real, very physical sensation happening inside of you. A tight, cold knot starts forming right in the pit of your stomach.
Your biology is shifting.
Exactly. You can feel a sudden, erratic spike in your heart rate. Your breathing becomes shallow. It shifts from your diaphragm up into your upper chest.
You're bracing for impact.
Right. Your body is physically reacting to a world that isn't actually in the room with you.
It is a profoundly universal, modern ritual. And it's a fascinating paradox when you really look at the biology of it.
How so?
Well, because it runs entirely contradictory to how our nervous system evolved to understand physical safety.
Yeah.
I mean, your body is resting, right? You're horizontal.
Yeah, totally comfortable. You're in a climate-controlled environment. There is zero physical threat. Yet your sympathetic nervous system is running the exact same chemical sequence as if you were being actively hunted by a predator in the wild.
Wow, so it's literally a fight-or-flight response.
Exactly. Cortisol and adrenaline are just flooding your bloodstream. But because you're just lying there, there is nowhere for that kinetic energy to go.
And that biological dissonance is exactly what we're unpacking today. Because, honestly, it brings up a profound confusion about this entire modern setup. I mean, why do we do this?
That is the big question.
Why do we feel physically drained or intensely angry or just profoundly sorrowful over events happening to complete strangers, people we will never, ever meet?
We adopt their reality as our own. Right. And why does a solitary spark of digital outrage, something we watch for maybe, I don't know, a few seconds in the dark linger, like a heavy, suffocating fog over the entirety of the next day?
It bleeds into everything.
It really does. It shifts our mood while we are just pouring coffee in the morning. It alters the tone of voice we use when we speak to our family or, how much patience we have with our colleagues.
You're essentially carrying the ghost of a digital argument right into your physical reality.
Exactly. And today, our mission is to look squarely at this invisible transaction. We are mapping out exactly how the digital feeds we absent-mindedly consume are quietly reprogramming our internal baselines.
And by extension, literally reconstructing the physical reality we inhabit.
Yes. So the guiding question for our conversation, and this feels incredibly urgent for anyone who spends time holding a smartphone, is this. Why do we allow these tiny glass rectangles to dictate the baseline emotional temperature of our lives?
That is the essential question. And to even begin answering it, we have to validate the sheer weight of what is actually happening beneath the glass.
Right, because it's not what it seems.
Not at all. You are not merely consuming information when you stare into that screen. That is the great illusion of our era. You are unconsciously allowing an artificial rhythm to curate your universe.
An artificial rhythm. I like that phrasing.
It's a highly active, aggressively engineered process, but it's disguised as a passive leisure activity.
So let's pull the curtain back on that illusion right away, because I think we all operate under this incredibly naive, almost romantic assumption about the internet.
Oh, definitely. The whole town square idea.
Yeah, we think that when we open these platforms, we are stepping into a vast, bustling town square. We assume it's a global space filled with a vast constellation of real human beings just sharing their lives.
We think we're observing humanity in all its messy, authentic glory.
Right, but the underlying architecture of these spaces
Yeah.
isn't a town square at all, is it?
It is fundamentally different. The overwhelming majority of the digital landscape is not what it seems. We project our own humanity onto the interface.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we assume that every comment, every narrative, every highly charged interaction is tied to a living, breathing person. Someone with a history, a morning routine, a soul.
Right, we assume there's a human behind the keyboard.
Exactly. But the foundational architecture of these spaces is heavily populated by automated entities. These are sophisticated algorithms and lines of code masquerading as human emotion.
Masquerading as emotion. That's a chilling thought.
And they are designed with a singular, incredibly mechanical purpose: to harvest human engagement. They do not care about connection. They care about retention.
Now, harvesting engagement, that sounds incredibly clinical. It sounds like a farming operation for human attention.
It's a very accurate analogy.
But I want to get into the how of that. How exactly do these automated programs, these lines of code, manage to capture and hold our attention so effectively? Like, what is the actual mechanism they are exploiting here?
The primary mechanism is polarization.
Polarization. Okay, break that down.
So an automated entity, a machine learning algorithm that's optimizing for screen time, it does not seek nuance.
Because nuance is boring to a machine.
Because nuance requires slow, deliberate cognitive processing. And slow cognitive processing does not keep your thumb lingering on the screen.
Ah, okay. You might put the phone down to think about it.
Precisely. To harvest engagement, these systems are designed to present extreme, intensely charged narratives. They push the absolute edges of the human experience.
So we're talking outrage terror.
Outrage, terror, profound injustice, or even unattainable, flawless perfection. Anything that spikes the emotional dial.
Because the algorithm learned what works. I mean, the engineers didn't necessarily sit in a room and say, let's make everyone furious.
No, they just told the machine to maximize the amount of time people spend looking at the application.
Right. And the machine ran infinite tests and discovered that a video of a calm, reasonable discussion holds attention for a fleeting fraction of the time that a screaming match does.
The system learned our neurobiology better than we know it ourselves. By presenting these polarizing extremes, they demand an immediate emotional reaction from the observer.
They bypass the logical brain entirely.
They target the amygdala. They do not ask for your contemplation. They demand your visceral biological response. Anger, fear, profound envy. These are sticky emotions.
Sticky emotions, meaning they stay with you.
Yes. They create a feedback loop in the brain that demands resolution, which keeps you scrolling to find that resolution. A resolution, by the way, that the platform will never actually provide.
So the platform acts like a slot machine for our fight-or-flight response.
Exactly.
And this makes me think about the actual physical cost of this process. We all know the brain processes vicarious trauma, but what fascinates me is how the algorithm weaponizes that specific biological glitch.
It's a very potent exploit.
It reminds me of the mechanics of walking through a really sophisticated, automated, haunted house.
Well, that's a great analogy.
Right. Because you know you paid for a ticket, you know you're standing in a warehouse, you know the walls are just painted plywood.
You logically understand it's fake.
Yes, and the monsters jumping out of the shadows are entirely fabricated. They're just wires, pneumatics, and lines of code. The threat is completely artificial.
But your body doesn't care.
Exactly. When the mechanical monster lunges at your face, the adrenaline flooding your veins is absolutely real. The sweat forming on your palms is real.
Your heart hammering against your ribs.
It's a tangible, measurable physiological event. The artificial stimulus has forced a genuine biological creation within your body.
That analogy captures the exact biological trap. The monster is fake, but the terror is real. And the biological footprint of that terror, the cortisol release, the elevated heart rate, the muscle tension, it is entirely indistinguishable from the terror you would feel if a genuine physical threat were standing right in your bedroom.
Wow. Indistinguishable.
Yes. The human nervous system, for all its evolutionary brilliance, it does not discern between a beautifully coded digital phantom on a high-resolution screen and a physical danger right in front of you. It simply processes the visual and auditory data and responds to the stimulus you feed it.
Which leads to a really fascinating and frankly concerning mechanical problem. If my body is pumping real cortisol because of a fake digital monster, my nervous system is fully engaged.
It is preparing you to sprint or to fight for your life.
But physically, I am just lying still in bed. I eventually hit the lock button on the phone, put the cold device on my nightstand, and close my eyes. But I can't just flip a switch to metabolize the chemical cocktail currently racing through my bloodstream.
No, you cannot.
So what happens to a brain that is simultaneously physically exhausted but chemically terrified?
This is where we transition into the deeply unprotected state of the scrolling mind. When you are lying there, physically still but mindlessly scrolling, your brainwaves actually change.
They change physically.
Yes. You shift out of the sharp, analytical beta wave state of active problem solving. Because the physical act of swiping is so repetitive and requires no complex motor skills, your brain enters a relaxed alpha or even theta wave state. It is an almost hypnotic rhythm.
It's that recognizable feeling where time just sort of blurs, like you meant to look at a few updates for 5 minutes and suddenly a massive chunk of the night is gone.
Time distortion is a classic sign of that trance state.
And you don't even clearly remember the last dozen things you looked at. You aren't critically evaluating the content anymore. You are just an open conduit.
Yes, and the real danger lies in the pairing of that deeply relaxed brainwave state with highly stressful stimuli.
Because normally those two things don't go together.
Right. In that relaxed rhythm, your critical conscious defenses, the parts of your brain that usually filter information and say, wait, this isn't relevant to my survival, they are entirely lowered.
The gatekeeper basically goes on a coffee break.
The gatekeeper is fast asleep. And in this unguarded state, your neural pathways become incredibly vulnerable to the programming they are observing. Your subconscious mind is highly active, and its native language is emotion.
Its native language is emotion. Okay, let me make sure I'm following the mechanics of that. Are you saying the subconscious doesn't understand logic at all?
It does not speak logic.
So it doesn't process the logical disclaimer I might tell myself. Like if I see a terrible video and I think, well, this is just a video from halfway across the world, it has nothing to do with my actual life.
It completely ignores that logical disclaimer. The subconscious does not process geography, and it does not process the context of a screen. It only processes the intensity of the feeling.
That is wild.
Neurologists point out that human beings have an incredibly robust system of mirror neurons. When you observe someone in profound distress, your brain fires the exact same neural pathways as if you were experiencing that distress yourself.
So that's the biological basis of empathy.
Exactly. Empathy is a survival tool, but when it gets hijacked by an endless digital feed, it becomes a massive vulnerability. It does not require you to physically experience a trauma to absorb its emotional weight.
Wait, so sheer observation, when paired with that relaxed, unguarded state of mind, is enough to literally rewrite our internal baseline.
It is more than enough. If an artificial narrative triggers an intense surge of fear, anger, or despair, it entirely bypasses your logical, conscious mind. It lays down a new neural pathway. It plants a seed directly into the rich soil of your subconscious expectations.
But I want to explore the edges of this because the implications are staggering. Let's say I spend an hour watching narratives of absolute betrayal, people detailing how their partners destroyed their lives or coworkers sabotaging them.
Which is very common content.
Very common. Am I essentially simulating that betrayal on a subtle internal level? Like, is my brain actually practicing the feeling of being betrayed?
You are actively rehearsing it. You are internalizing the limitations, the traumas, and the heartbreaks of total strangers.
Wow.
People are walking around their daily lives carrying the heavy, limiting beliefs of automated echoes. And because the subconscious mind has accepted these emotional charges as real, valid experiences, it begins to alter your perception to expect them in the physical world.
Because it wants to keep me safe.
Yes. Your brain's primary job is to predict what happens next to keep you alive. If you feed it a steady diet of betrayal and disaster, it will calibrate its predictive models to expect betrayal and disaster in your own home and in your own workplace.
We are essentially downloading other people's misery and wearing it as our own psychological armor.
That's a powerful way to frame it.
It really explains why someone can wake up on a perfectly beautiful morning with nothing actually wrong in their immediate environment, but they just feel a looming sense of dread.
The dread was programmed the night before.
Exactly. But here's the piece of the puzzle that makes this a closed loop. Because if our minds are absorbing these narratives so deeply, how does the technology itself respond to what we are experiencing in our bodies? This isn't just a one-way street, right?
It is a dynamic, absolute loop. And to understand the architecture of this loop, we have to look at how the algorithms governing our digital feeds actually operate.
Okay, let's get into the code.
They are not just sorting data. They act as a direct, concentrated microcosm of how human perception shapes reality. There is a well-documented psychological and neurological principle. Where attention goes, energy flows, and eventually, that cognitive focus materializes as your lived experience.
Right, what you focus on expands.
Exactly. The algorithmic rhythms of your devices emulate this cognitive filtering with cold, flawless precision. They act as a hyper-accelerated mirror. And they are driven by two mechanical forces, magnification and maintenance.
Magnification and maintenance. Okay, let's break down the actual mechanics of those two forces. How does the code magnify my emotion?
Let's start with magnification. When you react to a digital narrative with a spike of anger or a jolt of fear, your behavior changes.
Even slightly.
Even on a micro level. You might pause scrolling for an extra fraction of a second. You might open the comment section just to look. You might type a reply.
And the system sees all of that.
The system immediately registers that micro interaction. It does not judge the moral or emotional quality of your anger. It only measures the intensity of your attention.
It doesn't care if I'm mad or happy. It just knows I'm engaged.
To the machine, your physiological arousal is simply categorized as engagement. Therefore, it magnifies that state by instantly supplying an endless tide of similar, infuriating content. It takes your localized spark of frustration and turns it into a raging digital fire by confirming that this is what you want to see.
It's pure confirmation bias, but automated and put on steroids.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's magnification. What about the maintenance part? Once it has magnified that state and made me furious, how does it maintain it?
Well, once it has elevated your emotional state, say, pulling you into a frequency of outrage, it seeks to maintain you in that exact holding pattern indefinitely.
Because an outraged user stays on the app.
A user held in a continuous state of heightened emotion is a predictable user. You are continuously engaged, continually seeking the next hit of validation for your outrage. And the fascinating thing is, our own neurology operates with this exact same impersonal efficiency.
Really? How so?
The reticular activating system in your brain acts as a filter. Once you tell your brain that outrage is the most important pattern to look for, your brain will physically filter out neutral or positive information in your physical environment.
It just deletes the good stuff.
It ignores it entirely.
Yeah.
It will only deliver you more evidence to justify your anger. The algorithm is simply doing outside your skull what your reticular activating system is doing inside it.
It's an impersonal matching engine.
Precisely.
Which brings up the sensory reality of the devices we're holding.
Yeah.
Because we tend to think of our phones as these inert pieces of glass and metal, just passive screens that we tap on.
That is a very outdated view of the hardware.
Right. Consider the reality of front-facing cameras and the sheer technological capability of these devices to track our focal engagement. They don't just know what we click anymore. They know how we look at what we click.
The biofeedback is immense.
You're looking at a video, and without you even consciously realizing it, your brow furrows in disgust. A tiny fraction of tension tightens the muscles around your eyes. Your pupils dilate slightly in response to a threatening image.
And the sensors pick all of that up.
Exactly. The device, through complex sensor arrays and engagement metrics, detects that infinitesimal emotional spike. It registers the exact frame of the video that caused your scrolling thumb to hesitate, and instantly, seamlessly, it curates the next dozen videos in the queue to feed you more of that exact specific stimulus.
It is a localized, immediate reflection of how our own psychology responds to our internal state.
It is the ultimate feedback loop. It is perception creation happening in real time, accelerated by immense computing power. The device reads the behavioral manifestation of your emotional frequency, and it instantly builds a digital world around you that entirely justifies and amplifies that exact frequency.
It's like stepping into an echo chamber constructed entirely of highly sophisticated mirrors.
Ooh, I love that image. Let's walk through that.
You walk in, and you whisper a complaint about the state of the world. You just say, everything is terrible. The chamber doesn't just reflect the sound back to you. The room actually shifts.
It physically changes shape.
It actively constructs new, infinite walls, stretching out in every direction, specifically designed to amplify your tiny whisper into a deafening, inescapable roar.
Until you are standing there, covering your ears, completely convinced that this chaotic roar is the only sound that exists in the entire universe.
And when you are convinced that the roar is all there is, that deafening noise obscures absolutely everything else. Which brings us to the most crucial consequence of this mirroring effect.
What happens to the quiet stuff?
Yes, if the algorithm, and by extension the filtering mechanisms of our own brains, only amplifies what we focus on, what happens to all the parallel possibilities, the positive outcomes, the quiet successes, the moments of peace that we are actively ignoring?
Because the brain can only process a finite amount of data at once. If it's filled to the brim with the roar, the quiet successes don't even register. They just vanish from my awareness.
Exactly. They do not vanish from physical existence, but they vanish from your perception. And if you cannot perceive an opportunity, you cannot act on it, which means it cannot materialize in your lived experience.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
This introduces the concept of hidden realities. The digital realm, because it optimizes for those sticky extreme emotions, focuses human attention entirely on one hyperpolarized end of the spectrum. While completely, utterly obscuring its opposite, this creates a powerful, paralyzing illusion of scarcity.
Let's ground this in a concrete, everyday reality, because I think anyone who has ever tried to make a life change has encountered this exact illusion of scarcity.
It happens every day.
Imagine the universal pursuit of finding a fulfilling career, or just trying to navigate a professional transition. You wake up on a Tuesday morning, the sun is shining, you make your coffee, and you actually feel a spark of genuine motivation.
A moment of optimism.
Right. You want to make a change, you feel capable. So, you sit down with your coffee and log online, seeking a bit of inspiration, maybe looking for advice on how others have successfully navigated a similar transition. You are looking for a roadmap.
But the platform is not designed to give you a balanced, nuanced roadmap. It is designed to capture your attention. So what does the feed present to you?
It absolutely buries the roadmap.
Completely.
Because quiet, steady career progression doesn't trigger the amygdala. Instead, you are hit with a relentless tide of narratives about workplace misery. You see videos of people secretly recording their bosses being toxic.
Outrageous corporate behavior.
Yes. You read endless, highly engaged threads detailing systemic, inescapable unfairness in the hiring market. You see stories of absolute grinding scarcity, painting a picture of an economy where millions of people are desperately fighting for crumbs, and every corporate environment is a dystopian nightmare.
And as you consume this, your internal emotional resonance, which was optimistic just minutes before, begins to violently align with that presented scarcity.
The mirror neurons fire.
Exactly. You physically feel the heavy, sinking dread of that narrative. The cortisol replaces the dopamine.
Right. And by holding your intense focus on this negative extreme, the digital space does something incredibly insidious to your perception. It completely hides the vast constellation of thriving, joyful opportunities that absolutely exist parallel to that misery.
It edits them out of your reality tunnel.
It completely obscures the stories of people finding deeply fulfilling work, of entirely new industries expanding, of quiet, steady, daily successes. Because you are only looking at the mirror reflecting misery, your reticular activating system adopts that as the baseline reality.
Your brain accepts the illusion.
You become utterly convinced that the world is devoid of good work. And so your reality tunnel narrows down to the size of a straw to match that exact belief. You close the laptop, the motivation is dead, and you don't even apply for the job.
You have constructed a boundary around your own potential. You have allowed a digital extremity, a mathematically curated slice of worst-case scenarios, to define the parameters of your physical universe.
It's tragic when you lay it out like that.
And the truly dangerous part is that this goes far beyond just conscious belief. It seeps into the deep subconscious programming of our identity. These adopted negative associations quietly, efficiently sabotage our potential from the inside out.
Okay, I want to dig into that. How does that internal sabotage actually work? Because consciously, I still want the better job. I still want the better life. How do we end up working against our own stated desires?
Let's look at the psychology of identity and association, specifically around the pursuit of wealth, or even just comfortable financial stability. A person may consciously state, I want to achieve financial freedom. I want to build a prosperous, stress-free life for my family.
A completely normal, healthy human desire. Security.
Exactly. That is their conscious, logical goal. It is what they write in their journal. But look at the subtle narrative diet they chronically consume.
The midnight scrolling.
Yes. If their digital feeds consist of endless stories equating wealth with monstrous, unethical behavior, narratives that portray any kind of financial success purely as the inevitable result of manipulation, cruelty, or the exploitation of others.
Which is a very common digital narrative.
It is everywhere. Their subconscious mind forms a powerful protective association. The subconscious links the concept of wealth directly to the identity of becoming a monster.
Oh, wow. Wealth equals monster. And the subconscious is primarily designed to protect our core identity. It wants us to remain a good person.
Precisely. The subconscious is fundamentally a survival mechanism, and social survival depends on not being cast out as a monster. To prevent you from becoming the unethical villain you despise on your screens, your subconscious actively, aggressively repels the very abundance your conscious mind is seeking.
It's trying to save you from yourself.
This is where cognitive dissonance creates physical friction. You will suddenly find yourself inexplicably procrastinating on important projects that could lead to a promotion.
You'll just drag your feet for no reason.
You will subtly sabotage lucrative opportunities by arriving late or forgetting key details. You will feel a mysterious, draining exhaustion every time you try to advance your business.
Because your body is fighting your ambition.
Your conscious mind wants the promotion, but your subconscious mind is violently slamming the brakes to keep you safe from the negative adopted association you have absorbed from the digital ether.
So, by mindlessly scrolling in the dark, absorbing these extreme narratives of how awful successful people are, we are essentially building an invisible, soundproof prison out of the fabricated beliefs of total strangers.
Brick by brick.
We're locking ourselves in a cell constructed entirely from artificial outrage and then wondering why we can't move forward in our lives.
Yes, that is the profound, quiet danger of a divided consciousness. You become a house divided against itself. Your conscious analytical mind is reaching for joy, expansion, and success, while your subconsciously programmed mind hijacked by algorithmic extremes is constantly bracing for betrayal, scarcity, and failure.
And let me guess who wins that tug of war.
Because the subconscious controls the overwhelming majority of our daily automated behaviors, the subconscious always wins.
That is heavy. I mean, it's a sobering realization to see how easily our internal wiring can be hijacked by a screen, but it is also incredibly illuminating.
How so?
Because if we have unknowingly built this invisible prison, it means the materials came from us. It means our attention is the mortar, and if our attention built it, we have the capacity to dismantle it.
Exactly. The architecture is yours. We hold the keys to the very cell we constructed. The algorithm only reflects. It does not generate. You are the generator.
But here is the massive challenge, and I think this is where so many people hit a wall and give up. Let's say I have this realization today. I realize I've been feeding my mind a steady diet of toxic, limiting beliefs.
The awakening moment.
Right. I recognize the cognitive dissonance. I decide today, right now, to shift my focus. I'm going to fiercely curate my attention. I'm going to focus on abundance, on healthy relationships, on the vast possibilities that exist.
You make the internal shift.
I feel the conviction. I really do. But then I put my phone down, I look around my physical reality, and my bank account is still hovering near zero. My current job is still deeply frustrating. The physical circumstances of my life haven't changed a bit.
The physical world lags behind.
How do we handle that agonizing gap? How do we navigate the weight between shifting our internal neurological focus and actually seeing our external physical reality change?
That gap is the ultimate test of internal authority. It is the crucible. There is an inevitable passage of time between cultivating a new internal baseline and witnessing its dense physical manifestation in the real world.
Because matter is slower than thought.
Physical reality is heavier, it is slower to move. The crucial error, the exact point where the overwhelming majority of people abandon their own agency and fall back into the algorithmic trap, is viewing this necessary passage of time as a delay.
A delay. It's a word loaded with anxiety.
It creates instant resistance.
It feels like a flight being held up on the tarmac indefinitely. You're just sitting there strapped in, tapping your foot, increasingly frustrated, checking your watch every 2 minutes. You feel a rising panic that something has gone fundamentally wrong with the system. You start doubting if the plane is ever going to take off.
Which is a brilliant way to describe it, because the concept of a delay implies lack. It implies an error in the system. It reinforces a profound feeling of separation from your desired outcome.
It highlights what I don't have.
When you look at your unchanged bank account and say, my success is delayed, this isn't working, you are actively generating the emotional frequency of absence and failure. You are affirming the lack.
And the mirror catches that.
Remember the mechanics of the universal mirror, of the reticular activating system. It only reflects and filters for what you affirm. By focusing on the delay, you instruct your brain to find more evidence of delay.
So how do we conceptually reframe that gap? If the agonizing wait isn't a delay, what is the actual mechanism at work?
It must be understood not as a delay, but as a stabilization period.
A stabilization period, okay.
This is a vital, highly functional phase of reality creation and psychological adaptation. It is essentially a stress test. Think of it like a massive software beta test. When developers create a powerful new operating system, they don't immediately roll it out to 1 billion devices on day one.
Right, because if there's a fatal flaw in the architecture, the entire global network crashes.
Exactly. They put it in a beta environment, they run simulations, they test the structural integrity of the code under pressure. The stabilization period in our lives serves the exact same function.
So the universe is beta testing me.
The foundational forces of your psychology are tempering your new internal frequency. They are testing the structural integrity of your newly adopted belief system before it goes live.
So it's building the capacity to handle the upgrade.
Yes. Consider the sheer psychological shock of what happens if an immense, expansive, radically different reality is suddenly bestowed upon an uncalibrated mind.
Like winning the lottery.
Exactly like that. If a massive amount of wealth or a deeply profound, healthy relationship suddenly drops into the lap of someone whose internal architecture is still secretly wired for scarcity, drama, and betrayal, they simply cannot sustain it.
Its system rejects it.
Their subconscious nervous system will register the new, positive reality as a foreign threat. It will panic. They will unconsciously, systematically dismantle the gift.
Because it feels unsafe.
They will sabotage the relationship to return to the familiar comfort of drama. They will squander the resources to return to the familiar baseline of scarcity. The new reality will slip through their fingers like dry sand because their internal container was never stress tested to hold it.
Because their internal container isn't built for the weight of that success. It's like trying to run high voltage electricity through wiring built for a tiny desk lamp.
It sparks and burns the house down.
It's like the hidden growth of a massive tree. Before it can shoot upward into the sky, it must spend an agonizingly long time pushing roots deep into the dark earth. If it rushed upward without that unseen stabilization, the first mild gust of wind would tear it completely from the ground.
Precisely. The stabilization period, that frustrating gap where nothing seems to be happening externally, is actually a period of intense internal construction. It is the time required for you to expand your internal container. You are building the emotional and neurological muscle to carry the weight of your new reality without collapsing.
So the waiting is actually the work.
It is a necessary invitation to explore what it truly means to be emotionally independent of the physical evidence.
Emotionally independent of the evidence. I have to pause on that because it sounds like a complete paradox. How can an ordinary person be genuinely happy or secure about something that physically has not happened yet? How do you maintain equilibrium when the evidence of your own eyes tells you it's not real?
Because true agency is not frantic, desperate wishing. It is achieving a state of profound, unshakable equilibrium. It is reaching a psychological set point where you are equally at peace, equally joyous, with or without the immediate external validation.
You detach from the outcome.
When you no longer desperately need the physical evidence of the promotion or the relationship to prove your internal worth or your biological safety, when you are fine regardless, that is the exact moment your internal architecture proves it is finally strong enough to actually hold the new reality without destroying it. You have passed the beta test.
So the lack of desperation is the ultimate proof of structural integrity. If I'm screaming, "Why isn't it here yet?" I'm proving I'm not ready for it.
You're proving you still lack.
If I'm calmly preparing for its inevitable arrival, I am ready.
Exactly. The invisible internal work is what makes the visible external growth permanent. Which brings us to the final and most crucial phase of this exploration.
The action steps.
The actual actionable steps for reclaiming our internal landscape from the algorithmic noise.
Okay, let's get deeply mechanically practical here, because knowing the invisible prison exists is one thing, and understanding the stabilization period helps with the patience. But how do we actually break the algorithmic lock?
We have to overwrite the code.
How do we actively detoxify our neural pathways from the artificial programming we've absorbed during those late-night scrolling sessions?
The ultimate mechanical antidote to a manipulated reality is conviction. We have spent the last decade being passive consumers of conviction. We have let automated polarized echoes convince us of despair.
We bought their story.
We must now become the proactive, aggressive architects of our own internal baselines. You must learn to convince yourself of your desired reality more fiercely, more relentlessly, and with more emotional intensity than the digital realm tries to convince you of tragedy.
It's a literal battle of convictions. My chosen deliberate belief versus the mathematically optimized algorithmic rhythm.
And you can win that battle.
How do I actually generate that kind of overriding conviction in my own brain? Like, what is the daily practice?
It begins with deliberately retreating from the noise. You cannot overwrite the code while you are still plugged into the feed.
Put the phone down.
You must purposefully drop your brainwaves into a profound, deliberate state of relaxation. This is the exact same receptive alpha wave state that the digital feeds exploited when you were exhausted in bed.
But now I'm doing it on purpose.
Now you are taking conscious, deliberate control of the helm. Find a quiet space. Close your eyes. Slow your breathing to regulate your vagus nerve and signal physical safety to your body.
You are intentionally setting the stage to speak directly to the subconscious.
Yes. You are opening the door yourself. Lower the defenses of the conscious mind entirely on your own terms. And in this quiet, biologically safe space, you must cultivate a highly specific, intensely joyful mental scene.
What kind of scene?
Well, the mistake people make is trying to visualize the entire complex process of achieving a goal. Do not visualize the chaotic middle steps.
Don't imagine the hard work part.
No, visualize only the ultimate finalized conclusion. Imagine a scenario, a brief, vivid 5-second moment where someone you deeply love, someone whose voice you know perfectly, acknowledges the arrival of your desired outcome.
A 5-second moment.
Hear the specific cadence of their voice, saying, "I am so incredibly happy for you. Look at what you finally built."
Just a short, hyper-specific scene. A sensory snapshot of success. Not a whole movie, just a GIF.
Exactly, a mental GIF. Because a short loop is easier for the brain to sustain without wandering. And the absolute key to this mechanism is not just to see the image, but to physically feel it.
Engage the body.
You must generate the somatic emotional resonance of that moment in your body. Feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. Feel the genuine relief. Feel the gratitude expanding in your chest.
You have to make it biologically real.
Feel the solid, undeniable reality of it. And then you loop it. You play that short emotional visualization over and over in your mind.
And what does that looping actually do on a neurological level? Why does it work?
It utilizes neuroplasticity. By looping this emotional visualization, your brain fires the exact same neural pathways as if the event were physically occurring.
Neurons that fire together, wire together.
Precisely. You begin to generate a biological frequency that is intense enough to overwrite the old programming. It acts as a cognitive solvent, quietly dissolving the accumulated digital toxins and the adopted scarcity that have clouded your subconscious. You are manually installing a new operating system.
I really appreciate that framing because it's a warm, highly empowering perspective. What we are discussing here today, we are not advocating for total puritanical isolation.
No, not at all.
We are saying the solution is to throw your smartphone into a river, retreat to a remote cabin in the woods, and become an ascetic hermit completely disconnected from society.
That's just avoiding the modern world.
Right. We live in a highly connected digital world. We like art, we like humor, we like staying in touch with our families. But what we are fiercely advocating for is an uncompromising guardianship of our attention.
Guardianship is the perfect word.
We have to recognize that we are the sole gatekeepers of our own minds. We have to stop being the passive, biologically exhausted consumers of the world's algorithmic rhythm and start being the relentless, joyful authors of our own internal state.
You must guard your emotional resonance as if it is your most precious physical asset. Because mechanically speaking, it literally is the raw material from which your future is constructed.
The actual building blocks.
If you give it away to a screaming stranger on a screen, you have less material to build your own life.
Which brings us to a much broader, almost philosophical reflection on what it means to be a human being in this specific era of technological acceleration.
It really reframes our place in the world.
As we unpack all the mechanics we've discussed today, the architecture of the feeds, the biological vulnerability of the subconscious mind, the cosmic matching engine of our own neurological filters, it paints a sweeping, almost staggering picture of human capacity.
It absolutely reveals our true baseline nature. The grand takeaway is not that technology is evil, it is that human beings are profoundly powerful.
Powerful beyond measure.
We are not fragile, reactive creatures adrift in a hostile random universe. We are infinitely powerful reality creation engines. We are constantly, ceaselessly generating and filtering the world around us through the sheer measurable force of our focused attention and our emotional resonance.
But for a brief, weird, disorienting moment in our history, these past few decades of rapid digital expansion, we simply forgot how powerful we are.
We handed over the keys.
We unconsciously outsourced our navigation to artificial, polarized rhythms designed entirely to sell ads. We let tiny glass rectangles dictate the weather of our souls and the chemistry of our blood.
But the steering wheel has never left our hands.
Exactly. We forgot that the steering wheel has never, ever left our hands.
We allowed ourselves to act as passengers in our own vehicles. But the beautiful thing about awareness is that it shatters the illusion instantly. Once you see the underlying mechanism of the algorithm and your own biology, you cannot unsee it.
The curtain is pulled back for good.
The spell is broken. You reclaim the wheel simply by recognizing you are holding it.
And that leads perfectly to a lingering thought, something I really want to leave you with as we wrap up this exploration. Think back to that opening scene we painted at the very beginning.
Lying in the dark.
Lying in the dark, the cold phone glowing, the heavy eyelids, the tight knot forming in your stomach. Consider the sheer, miraculous biological power required to alter your heart rate, shift your breathing, and flood your bloodstream with chemicals.
All based on a phantom.
Based entirely on a fabricated digital ghost that isn't even in the room with you. If just a mere exhausted fragment of your unconscious, distracted attention has the power to build a localized world of overwhelming anxiety and physical tension within your own body.
Imagine the alternative.
Imagine the sheer breathtaking magnitude of the universe you could materialize if you directed that exact same creative energy with deliberate, uncompromising, fiercely guarded joy.
It elevates the act of attention from a passive habit to a question of profound daily responsibility.
It really does. It changes everything. So the very next time the room is dark and the screen is glowing and your thumb is hovering over the glass,
Take a breath.
pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what universe will you choose to feed tonight when the lights finally go out?